Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, January the 2nd, and yes, I have missed a couple of weeks. So today I'm actually recording two, the one that was supposed to occur last week. Okay, a few days. Yeah, last week. Let's go with last week, and then the one for this week properly. Yes, I've missed a couple of weeks. It's been an interesting and unexpected couple of weeks on the family front, so things just weren't in a position. I probably could have recorded some, but there was very, very little stitching going on, so I figured, anyway, several things, there were no videos, so thank you for those of you that were checking in. I'm doing okay. Hopefully we're gonna be back on a more regular schedule now, but time will tell. Anyway, I hope everybody had a really good Christmas, or a really good Kwanzaa, or a really good time off if you don't celebrate either of those things, and took some time to spend it with family and friends in a safe manner. Safety first, safety first, safety first. Anyway, so I hope everybody's had a good time, and welcome to 2022. New year, new things. So so as I said, I'm recording two videos today. The one that you should see first up is going to be my WIP parade, or 2021, a year in review. And then the second one will be my welcome to 2022 and plans and things like that. So with that, I'm going to do my 2021 year in review, things that I've learned, thoughts on what I did, you know, what I'm learning from those things that I'm going to take with me into 2022 and what I'm changing and all that kind of good stuff. So we are filming here in front of the Christmas village. Yes, I have not solved my, cord problem. Anyway, I need to get a friend of mine over here and he can help me fix this. Anyway, things for next year. Christmas has been coming down. I think I've got about 4 or 5 more things left to get down, and other than that, so Christmas should be down in the next couple of days and all put away. Anyway, the village does stay up a little longer because it is wintry, so I like to try to keep something that looks fun and festive up into the new year, so the village stays up longer. And with that, let's get into the stitching that I did accomplish in December. So not a ton was accomplished. As I said, things were a little more complicated than I expected, and unexpected things were happening. But I did get some stuff done. So let's start off with the infamous The Temperature Tree by the Stitchin' Mommy on Etsy, Sarah Hughes. So I finally pulled the pin, got it done, got the anchor floss, and so I've gotten back to stitching on this one. Yes, I didn't take it out of the Q-snap because it's on the schedule to be stitched on today. So here is my temperature tree. So there is the new branch. So this branch is now complete, ready for leaves. I think I'm actually going to come down and do another branch and then do 2 months of leaves. So this is using a solid anchor. And out of all the things I've tried, and we all know I've tried and tried and tried and tried. It's like, what is going on? Okay. I'm okay with this. It's a little bit darker than what you see on the other branch, but I figure by the time you get the leaves on all of those branches, it will be just fine. And then my plan is, as I get down into the trunk, where it potentially, because it gets more solid as it comes down, so the same way that I came up this side and sort of did a minimal amount just to get up to the branches, I'm going to come down on the other side and do a minimal amount to get down to the branches. And then I'm going to use the infamous cocoa bean that's variegated, that's causing all the problems. and I'm going to fill in the center of the trunk with that cocoa bean with all of its variegation. I'm planning on going up and down with that, and I'll fill in the center with that cocoa bean, and that should hopefully keep everything balanced. So I at least got back to working on this. I'm way behind where I thought I was going to be by the end of the year. I can now go and finish downloading my temperatures for 2021 so that I can work on this. But at least I made my decision. I'm using my anchor floss, and so I'm back to stitching this. And the really funny thing is, after all the moaning and whining and looking at things and trying and all that kind of stuff, as soon as I sat down and was working on this branch, I was like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed working on this one. So I'm really glad that I've made a decision, and I've put that first branch in, and I'm happy with how it's looking, so we can now make some progress on that. Okay, so then I will also say, because this is my WIP parade, you will be hearing zippers opening and closing and all that kind of stuff, because I've got to keep these things in their bags. So my December focus piece, which was Christmas Quilts by Rosewood Manor. Okay, and here's where we are. So I did get some stuff done, clearly not as much as I was hoping. So I got all of these little baubles here in the top, which is done with Weeks Dye Works Amber. Those are done. And as I was finishing up the amber, so I got a couple of these diamond shapes and a couple of the stars in there. I was really hoping that I was going to have time to get the Petite Treasure braid, the gold Petite Treasure braid, because that's going to fill in sort of all of these spots left in the word Christmas. But I didn't get to it, so that's life. Finished off the greens in this motif. Believe it or not, the center of these needs to be filled in. There's sporadically a couple of other colors that go in there, so not quite complete. And then worked on, because this sort of joining branch color is the same color as the darker green of this. Really, I just was using up the floss that I had pulled out and had been working with, and put that in there and finished that up. So really a huge amount less than I was hoping to get done on this particular piece in December, but as I said, December turned out to be a little bit unexpected, and that's life, and sometimes other things are more important, and stitching takes a back seat. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about this is, which I had been meaning to talk about earlier, but as usual forgot. So I'm actually using my handy clamp bars on this. So this is, I'm using scroll rods from American Dream Products, because that was what I had in my stash that was the right size. And when I was originally setting this up to get working on it, I was like, ugh, I just don't want to have to stitch this, base this onto my scroll rods and, or go find my stuff so I could do that. I've got the Velcro stuff to put on it, and I didn't feel like doing it. And so I pulled out the handy clamps, my longest ones, which are 24 inches, and I went, wonder if they'll fit. Now, I think when I was doing this originally, I had looked to see that you can get replacement clamps just in case I broke them. So I was very careful while I was putting it on, but the answer is they did fit on here. So I was very happy about that. And I have to say, if you go back, I'd been debating about what my favorite scroll rods are, and whether it was roll-a-frame or the handy clamps, and I was debating between those two. Now, part of it has to do with the fact that I only have one set of roll-a-frames. And, you know, you can get them, you just need to be prepared to wait. That's how life works. And so be it. But I really do think that the more time that I've spent with the handy clamps, they really are turning into my favorite. Simply because they're just so easy to put things on, take things on and off, right? You're not having to attach anything to your fabric, so you're not having to glue anything on there or cut anything off at the end, or, you know, all those kinds of things. It's very, very easy to get them on. They are lighter weight than my quantum frame. So I was really, as I was working on this, I was like going, yeah, I think I am converted. I think I've really become a handy clamp. That's my #1 scroll rod solution, just purely for how easy it is to get stuff on and off. Anyway, so this one, I've left it on here. So there you go. There's my December progress. It's going to come off of here, and it's going to go into its bag for storage for the next little while. All right. Okay. So I'm going to treat this, before we get into the WIP parade, I'm going to do all of my regular video things that occurred sort of up to Christmas, and then we'll do a couple of carry forward items. So let's talk about acquisitions. So fairly lightweight on the acquisitions. I did buy a couple of charts. So Twin Peak Primitives was having a year-end sale, 25% off, and that's the largest discount I've seen for Twin Peak Primitives charts. So, but I was trying to be very responsible, and so I got 2 charts. So I got Twin Peaks Plaid-emic Autumn. So earlier this summer, they did summer, and I purchased that. I think, I'm pretty sure winter's out. I don't know if spring has been done yet. And the funny thing is, I like the concept of this. I'm not sure I love the scarecrow, and I'm not sure I love the tractor. But other than that, and I'm probably, when I do it, I probably won't do it as black and white check. It will be some other combination, so stay tuned for that. The other one that I got, so this is one, Twin Peak Primitives also do Twin Peak Primitive exclusives, which is sort of a whole kit situation. So there's a specialty item, whether it's a box or a tin or a something, and you get the fabric and the threads and an exclusive chart and all sorts of things that go in that. If you're wanting to see, all you need to do is Google Twin Peak Primitives Limited Exclusive, and you can only get them from one particular site. As usual for me, I don't usually like getting kits and things like that, just because I don't necessarily want all the items. I usually want to change the fabric to a different color. There's usually colors used in the chart that I want to change as well. So that's why generally kits don't, I don't really enjoy doing kits, because I like to do all of those changes. So this chart that I got came out as one of their Halloween exclusives under that limited, the Twin Peak Primitives limited edition. And there was just such, their limited edition, there's a small number, and there was such a hullabaloo about this particular chart that they went and they actually released the chart as an individual chart that you could get as a PDF from their website. So I got the Haunted House Sampler. Now again, I've seen people stitching on this, and it looks really quite nice. I think there's probably several color changes and things like that that I will do to this when I get around to stitching this. But for some reason, it actually really, really appealed to me. And so I bought that when it was on sale. Yeah, so the sale is over. It was ended, I think, just before Christmas. I think that one was over. So that's what I got on the Twin Peak Primitives sale. All right, the other thing that I picked up was my fourth quarter. They call it autumn. It drives me nuts. They start the year with winter. Anyway, I always think of this as the winter one, but it's called the autumn. So this is the autumn 2021 Stony Creek magazine. And of course, largely it has to do with the fact that I need this for part 4 of the Ecclesiastes band sampler that they've got in here. So you need all four magazines from 2021 to get all of it. Now, with one of my LNSs, I have a standing order in with them. So you can no longer, I used to be a subscriber to the Stony Creek magazine. They're no longer distributing, mailing it to individuals and running subscriptions like that. You have to get it either through Stony Creek or from your LNS. So I have a standing order with one of my LNSs, and I've had it with them. So ever since they changed to it, you couldn't get it mailed to you. They've had my subscription, and they hold it for me. And the really great thing about them is that you can, I will confess, I don't know if they do this for everyone, but they certainly do it for me. That if I get in there and I don't like the magazine, I don't have to take the magazine. I don't think there's been one that I've left behind, but they have been very gracious to me and have said that if I don't like it, I don't have to take it. You can also go to the Stony Creek website if you want to see what's in this. I was just going to highlight a couple of ornaments that are in here. So there are 3 ornaments. Yes, I'm covering up because down here is one of the charts. This is actually a tray that you can get from Stony Creek itself, and these fit into there. And I really love this concept. And according to the pricing at the back of this, it's actually really economical. Of Christmas, $7.99 US. So it's a very economical option. Now, the problem for me is, for those of you that live in the US, it's a very economical option. For me, living in Canada, it turns into a not very economical option because the shipping to get a package that has that turns out to be quite expensive. But hopefully one of these days, travel is going to resume a little bit more normally. I'm not going to be traveling anytime soon, as far as I know, just again, due to a family situation. But once it gets back to normal and things are resumed and things are a little bit better for travel, I have my aunt and uncle are normally snowbirds, and they have a place down in Phoenix. So hopefully when that gets back to normal, I will be able to order these things from Stony Creek, and I will ship them down to my lovely aunt and uncle in Phoenix. And then I will go visit, get some warmth for myself, visit with them, and bring it back, because that's how I'll get around it. Yeah, I know. Planning a trip where you have to, having it mailed up is cheaper than flying, but the answer is, I save the mailing costs when I'm going to go down and visit and do something fun down in Phoenix anyway. And go to the attic and all sorts of fun things. Yeah, that trip in my head is all planned out, and it's a really fun trip, so I just need things to get back to a little more normal, and then we'll do that. So I got my magazine, and I know where that's going to get set up with the other ones. And then the other things that I got, so picked up a couple of Weeks Dye Works. This is Amber, and this is Blackberry. I got the Blackberry because that is the color that is used for the word Merry Christmas, as well as some other things in that Rosewood Manor. And as we all know, I really struggled on a couple of those ladders and ripped out quite a bit. So I had a little moment where I was a little bit concerned. So I just picked up one more skein. It's a little bit different. I know, here we go again. The lessons about, you know, get it all at the same time so it's all in the same color batch. But you don't, what can I say? Now, according to the pattern, I only need, I needed 3 skeins. I had 3 skeins. Hopefully that allows for a little bit extra. So it's not horrendously different, and I'm pretty sure on camera it's not going to look, you're not going to be able to see a huge difference. So I picked up one more. The difference, according to me, is that the purple is a little more intense in this one than it is in this one. But again, I've got the 3 skeins that I got together, so all of my Merry Christmas when I get there will all be done in very similar skeined, and wherever else it shows up, it will be fine. So this one I'm not worried about at all, but I just felt like maybe one more would be good. So I got that. Got one more amber just in case. It's used quite a bit in here, so you know, a lot of the stars and all that stuff is just being backstitched with one strand, so it should give you quite good coverage, but better safe than sorry. And this one is very similar to the one that I already have, so no concerns on that front. And then as I noted before, I was going to get a different color. So a lot of the back stitching, again, so a lot of the back stitching that's done in here, like even in these snowflakes, a lot of the back stitching is being done with Weeks Dye Works Onyx, which is a black. And black is not necessarily my favorite color. As we all know, I tend to go more blue. So I went and while I was picking up those 2 skeins and my magazine, I was looking at options, and in my head I had picked out what the color I thought it was going to be, and I went into the shop and they had it in stock, and I looked at it and I went, well, that's not going to work. So I spent some quality time in the hand dyed, and what I picked up, and again, this isn't going to show up on camera, so as I picked up a couple of skeins of Gentle Arts Black Crow. Now, the thing that you can't see, oh, you might be able to see it a little bit, is it's a little more blue. So it's quite dark, and the real answer is, you know, probably a DMC would be just as fine. There's no, for what it's being used for, it wouldn't make a dramatic difference. But for some reason in my head, because everything else is being done with a hand dyed on that one, I felt like the other one should be hand dyed. I know, doesn't necessarily make any sense, but I did it anyway. So I picked up 2 skeins of Black Crow, and that's going to be my replacement for Onyx. Now, I haven't had to use it yet in the stitching that I've done on that particular piece, but that's going into my lovely floss set that I'm using for that one. And then the other one, the other color that was that I was switching out was Havana, which is generally being used for tree trunks, and so what I've got for that is Acorn, also a Gentle Arts. It's a much nicer brown than it looks. Yeah, see, that looks like really dark and not very nice. It's a much nicer brown than that in real life. Anyway, so those are my acquisitions up to Christmas. So far. Okay, so let's talk about some free charts. Some of these you may have already heard about. So this is, I will put the link for part 4 of the Historische Stickmuster, their Christmas freebie one. That link to their blog, I will put that on, that will be in the notes below. The other one that came out in December is this one from Whispered by the Wind. And this is called Kathy's Stars, which I think is quite nice. So I will put that link in the notes below as well. And then the big news that came out in December from Jeanette Douglas is that she is running she will be offering a series of charts over the course of 2022 that will all be free. Yay! Thank you, Jeanette. They're lovely. So this is what the whole series together looks like. I think it's called Mini Bouquet Sampler. So I will confess, I have actually seen this in real life, and it's really, really lovely. Now, as usual, I won't be stitching this in a timely fashion, but I will be downloading them. So the part that came out before Christmas was these borders. So you can barely see, but there is this white border around the edge and then these interior borders. In real life, in this thing, you can see the white, no problem. Again, it's whether it's my printer or photography or who knows what. So the borders came out before Christmas. I think now that this first one, the Pineapple Welcome, is out. And again, you all know my thing is download them while you can get them, because they may not be free for all time. We'll talk about that in the 2022, because we'll talk about some new free patterns that will be coming out that will be running for the year. So we'll talk about that in the next video. But this one's coming out. The borders came out before Christmas. Downloaded those, of course. And the theory is that one of these mini bouquets is being released at the beginning of every month for all of 2022. Included in the borders is the full list of threads to do this, if you want to stitch them the way that Jeanette stitched them. But I will absolutely say it's a very long thread list, and for me personally, I would not rush out and get all of those colors if I were kitting it up, even if I were pretending that I was going to stitch along. So Jeanette, she can't design with a couple of colors. She's always got a very wide, a longer palette than a lot of people would use, and just because it gives more dimension, and that's her style. For me, I think I would hold off, because I would just sort of, I think I would, until I saw where everything was being used. And again, this is me, because I have to see where everything's where, like, there might be 3 or 4 blues that at the end of the day I would come back and say I would want them to be consistent, not necessarily different. And so a lot of these were designed at various times for very specific reasons, and for, quite frankly, for some very specific stores that she was holding classes in, clearly pre-COVID. So she's now releasing them as these free charts. And so I think for me, I would wait to see, where everything's being used. And again, I'm usually never very good about participating in a stitch along. I always wait quite a few years before I eventually get there. So again, if you're looking at that thread list and going, holy smokes, like there's like a bajillion of these things, I don't know. I think this is a really great opportunity to use threads from your stash. Now, again, I will be downloading them religiously throughout 2022, and at some point, hopefully in my lifetime, I will get around to actually stitching this. But it's currently not sitting in my 5-year plan. We'll talk about that when we get to plans too. Oh yeah. Oh, hang on, I've got notes. Yes, the first one is called Pineapple Welcome. The one that will be coming out at the beginning of February is called Valentine Bouquet. Yeah, the colors are outrageous. So she's got 25 colors of Weeks Dye Works, 9 colors of Gentle Arts, and 16 colors of Classic Color Works, which is why I would say I really, really, really would not bother trying to collect 50 colors of hand-dyed threads to do this one chart. She did hers on 40 count Lakeside Linens vintage exemplar, in case anybody's wondering. But quite frankly, any neutral background that you've got. I was watching somebody on a Flosstube this week. I don't know who it was. I would love to give them the credit, who was kind of going like, with everything that's going on with supply chain issues, that Flosstuber and I as well strongly recommend, don't get too hung up on having exactly, like if the chart says this is what I used and it's a hand-dyed fabric, don't get too hung up for a couple of reasons. One, every hand-dyed piece of fabric is different. So the piece that they used and the piece that you may get could look very similar. They could actually look quite different. As I said, I had an opportunity where I saw 3 pieces of what was called the exact same color in the exact same count, and trust me, they did not look similar at all. So don't get too hung up. Really just look at what the chart is trying to accomplish with its fabric. And so I look at this and go, she's using a hand dyed because it gives a little bit of movement in the background, but it is really it is very, very neutral. And again, so when I were to stitch this, I would, now first of all, I'm never going to use vintage exemplar because it's too brown for me. But the aim is like, find something in your fabric stash or fabric options that is neutral. Like Vintage Country Mocha is a totally acceptable alternative to this. It's a printed fabric. It's, as far as I know, more easy to get because it's coming from Zweigart. It is not being hand dyed. You know, so don't get too terribly hung up. Find something. And again, I think this is a really great opportunity to use things from your stash. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's everything up to Christmas. Okay, the December stitching continued on. And so with that, let's get into my WIP parade, my plans for 2021, how they worked out, the lessons that I learned, things that I thought worked out well, things that I'm planning on changing in 2022, a little bit of 2022 because the next video is going to be more about 2022. But with that, let's get started off so overall, 2021 was the first year that I worked out and like I had an actual printed out. I came up with a plan. I had a stitching plan for 2021. As we all know, over the course of 2022, it sort of ballooned into a 5-year plan. And I really, really, really enjoyed the fact that I had a stitching plan. So for those of you who are I stitch what you want, when you want, whatever strikes you, whenever it strikes you, whatever the mood is, start whenever, all of those things, great, do that. That's you. For me, I just found it I really enjoyed the fact that I had a plan. I enjoyed the process of, you know, getting ready for 2021, that I was kitting those things up. Again, particularly because a lot of the things that I had in my 2021 plan were things that I'd had in my stash for decades, and I was finally stitching on them. And so for me, having a plan for 2021 has worked out fantastic. I love having the plan. I love having a 5-year plan. I'm actually working on because of course 2021 has now fallen off of the plan, so I need to put 2026 into the plan. So I'm working on filling out my 2026. I've got about 40% of it figured out, 40 to 50% of it figured out, so it's coming along. Again, I don't need to have it all fully fleshed out because it is 4 years from now, but I am working on that plan. Anyway, so I've enjoyed having a plan. As far as I know, for the foreseeable future, I am going to stick with having a plan because I think it's turned into a very productive year for me. I've had you know, very specific things that I was aiming towards. And again, it doesn't mean that the plan is fixed and that I can't deviate from it, because I totally can. A plan is just that. It's a plan. I can change it whenever I want. And certainly even for 2021, what I was going to be working on in July, I had the concept of what I wanted to work on in July, and I had 3 variations of it, and we all know what I ended up doing. You know, but really the plan was, there was a concept for what I wanted to do in July, and what I actually ended up working on got decided really, quite frankly, as I got closer to July. And so again, the plan is not static, but it does give me a framework that I am working within, and I really enjoyed that. So before we get too far along, I thought I would also show just gonna move this, my 2021 WIPs and my projects and how I kitted them up were in this bin. And again, so for me and my setup here where I am, this has worked out really well for me. And again, because a lot of the projects in here are not finished, and that was not the goal for 2021. The goal was not necessarily to finish everything I started. The goal was to get things started. And so again, on that front, thrilled with how 2021 worked out, thrilled that these things have all been started and been worked on. But that is where they're staying. And quite frankly, that's where they're going to be staying even in 2022, because it lets me keep track of them quite readily. So what did I work on? So 2021 started off with a bang. And I worked on, I had a moment where it's like, I forgot to bring down the charts, and the answer is it doesn't matter that I didn't bring the charts, because I finished it. So I worked on From Just Nan, Lady Scarlet's Journey, part 1, part 2, and part 3, I think. Anyway, you know. So 3 charts went into this. I'm doing this on a, I don't even remember what I'm doing it on. Forgot that part. I want to say it's a 28 count pewter Jobelin. Anyway, so started that at the beginning of the year, got through all 3 of them, and finished it up. So started at the beginning of, so January 1, this is my New Year, New Start, and I had it finished at the end of January. So very happy with that. Now, as usual, I am terrible about getting things into a fully finished state. So one of my goals for 2022, so I do already have the bell pull hanger for this. So I really just need to get this finished up into a bell pull. So stay tuned. I don't have a specific month that I'm working on this, but I have plans on how that's going to work out. So I thought that was a really great start to 2021. New Year, New Start. Finished the first month with a finish. It was all great. The other ones that I don't have here to show you that I worked on and spent quite a bit of time in 2021 on are, of course, the 3 charts from the Marbek Nativity, the Camel, the 2 angel and the 2 charts that made up the center panel. Man, that took way longer than I thought. So what did I learn from that? Well, I was working on that there were a couple of things that I learned. One, I probably would have been a little bit better off if I had set it aside periodically, and that it just wasn't sort of always continuing. And I just had some, you know, a week or 2 where it's like, I'm not working on this at all. I think having it out so regularly made me sort of not want to work on it. Even though I really, really wanted to get it done, and I really, really wanted to have it finished and 12 other things, I think having it out so regularly didn't necessarily aid my progress. And then as time went on, the other thing that I found that was very, very helpful for me for a project like that was when I started to begin to make some very specific goals about what I was accomplishing on it for the course of that week. Where I said, so for this week, I want to accomplish X. If I got more than X done, there was no problem with that. But setting a goal that was very, very manageable. So not one where you're like, I really have to work to get this accomplished. It's where you go like, you should be able, no problem, be able to get that particular goal accomplished over the course of this week and still give you time to work on something else. And so I found that was very helpful. And once I started doing that, I feel like it wasn't huge amounts of progress, but I was starting to make more regular progress towards getting it finished. And I think that helped me actually finally get there. So again, so that was another lesson learned. Set a very specific goal about what you're trying to get accomplished. And again, you know, normally in work situations, you have these when you set your goals, like you need to be striving for something and it should be a little bit more than what you've done. So for stitching, my answer is the opposite of that. Stitching is not supposed to be hard. Stitching is not supposed to be adding more stress to your life. Stitching is supposed to be the thing that you go like, oh, thank heavens I finally get to do this, and this is where I'm going to calm down and spend some time and all that kind of stuff. So for me, when I do my stitching goals, I make them hopefully very, very manageable, where you can say, this is what I'm going to get accomplished, and it's something that's manageable, because then you do have that success feeling where you're like, okay, I set that goal and I accomplished it. So now let's set another goal and get that accomplished and get these things progressing. So that was the lesson from that one. I will say that my parents had the Nativity out in front of their fireplace. Certainly when I was over there on Christmas Day, it was up. They have not been doing a huge amount of entertaining. Both of my parents fall into a highly at-risk category for COVID, so they've been very, very careful. So they've not had a huge number of entertaining opportunities, but they have had, quite frankly, a series of relatives over the course of December. And so I do have a cousin. She's older than me. She is also a stitcher. She has not been stitching for quite a while, but she used to stitch quite regularly. So she and her husband were over, and so they were over there after dinner. They were over for dessert and coffee, and she was apparently on her hands and knees in front of the fireplace looking at it, to the point where my dad actually went and got her a flashlight. I will say I don't think the lighting in my parents' living room it's very ambient light, so not very bright. And so my dad actually went and got her a flashlight so that she could shine the flashlight on the panels and see the sparkle from the Creak and the beads and all that kind of stuff. So I have these visions of my cousin on her hands and knees in front of the fireplace looking at the Marbek Nativity with a flashlight. Anyway, very nice of her to do that and take such an interest in it. And again, I had some other relatives that were over, and it's interesting because apparently in all of the situations, the women are always on their hands and knees in front of the fireplace looking at the Marbek Nativity. So it has made its first Christmas debut. So yeah, it's actually, it sounds really, slightly obnoxious coming from me, but it's really impressive. It's a really big piece. So very happy with that. Very happy to see it out on display for Christmas, and certainly on Christmas Day while I was over at my parents, looked at it myself. My dad was sitting there going like, I need to take some pictures of that again. He needs to add it to his repertoire. So that was nice to hear as well. All right. So what else did I work on? Okay, so February. So February was the month that I was starting. I'm trying to find, I don't think I've, yes, all sorts of complications because I don't have all the Some of the props that I had when I was doing this have long since been put away. Yes. So, so January was just in January, and then of course we had Freda's Fancy Stitching February, when I was working on, this is an 8-part series, so 8 charts that go up to, this was a mystery when it originally came out, and of course we know I can't do a mystery. So this is called The Banquet. I know, it's a lot of things. It's just because I'm trying to keep everything organized. So this is a canvas work piece. And so I got parts 1 through 4 accomplished. So what did I learn from this? It had been a really, really, really long time since I had done any canvas work. A really, really long time. And sitting down with this, I was like, I was very grateful that this was in the plan, and that I should always have a canvas piece that is being worked on in any given year. So this, the plan in 2022 is this is going to be coming out again and being worked on. But 4 out of 8 of the pieces were done on this. 4 of the 8 charts were done on this. So I'm halfway-ish. I don't know that it's exactly halfway, but it's halfway-ish. And the plan is that this is coming out again in 2022 because I want to work on it, because I want to do some canvas work. So that was February. Okay, so then came March and Lent. So 2021 is the year that I decided that I was going to have a Lent project. And my goal was that I was going to every day work on this piece for anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. So a minimum of 30, a maximum of 60, and then I was putting it away so I could work on something else. And so my Lent piece was by Thea Gouverneur. And it's, I'm going to leave this one in the bag unless there's too much glare. That's not bad. So this is her Jerusalem scene, which I felt was very apropos for Lent. And I've been to Jerusalem, so I recognize all of these sites. Yeah, so I love this concept. And this, of course, has been taken off the sidebars. And so again, so this was a new start for me, and that's how much I got during Lent, working on it for 30 to 60 minutes a day. Some days it was 30. I would say most of the days were probably 45 to 60 minutes. So again, the benefit of this project is, one, I got it started because I really want it. I love the concept of this chart. Again, not sure I love the kit, but it's the only way you can get it. It is going to be a monster of a piece, right? Like it's, right? It's a huge, huge piece. So the pros are I finally started working on it and got some progress, and enough progress on it that it actually looks like something. I know when I was originally working on this, one of the difficulties was when you're only working on it for a limited amount of time. Certainly when I started, like I had to put arrows on the sides of my piece because there was where I did a center start, and the way that it was working, it was very hard to tell where I was or where I'd ended up. So I ended up having to put those arrows on. So I got it started. It actually looks like something, so that's great. So again, biggest plus is that it got started. Second of all, the lesson that I learned from this one is setting up a project where you're like, I'm only going to work on this for 30 minutes a day, when it's a project of this size, as far as I'm concerned, is not necessarily helpful. So the funny thing is, you know, even now I hear people talking about they've got their projects that they set up, which is their daily 30 projects. And again, so the goal is that you spend 30 minutes and you work on set project, because as long as you're working on it regularly, you will see some progress. And the answer is that's what you see for 30 to 60 minutes every day for Lent. So you do see some progress. What I learned is a couple of things. One, I don't like limiting myself, saying I can only work on it for that amount of time and then move on to something else. Quite frankly, even now I hear people saying, oh, I'm doing this for my daily 30, or this is what I'm doing and it's my daily 30 and this is my, you know, et cetera, you know, the project where I'm just putting in one length of floss every day and et cetera, et cetera. And every time I hear people say things like that, I go, ooh, I should do that. And the answer is, you tried that. You tried that for Lent and you didn't enjoy it at all. So I am better off like spending an entire evening working on something on project A and then the next evening working on project B. I don't like sort of saying you're only doing this little bit. Now, part of it might be that if I did a much, much smaller project where that 30 minutes was translating into a much more tangible progress, that I might enjoy it more. But really the answer is I'm pretty sure if you go back and you look at sort of my at the end of Lent, welcome to Easter, and I'm like going, I didn't enjoy this at all. I did it for all of Lent. I stayed true to what my goal was, and I went, this is not for you. And again, part of it might have had to do with the project that I picked, you know, because it's many color changes and you're going in all sorts of things that really, for a project of this size, you're better off if you just sat and devoted an entire evening to it. So for 2022, I'm learning my lesson, and I'm saying to myself, I am not going to set myself up for that again. It doesn't mean somewhere down in the next 5 years I might not try another version of a daily 30 or something, but I certainly wouldn't do it on a big project. I would do it on a much, much smaller scale. But again, the benefit is I made progress. It's recognizable progress, and I'm looking forward to getting back to this particular chart in 2022, even though it's a kit. And with this kit and its you know, floss setup, all of those people out there who are really enjoying the great floss drop and keep, like, good for you, and if that works for you, that's fantastic. I can't stand it. It's not a system that works for me in the slightest. And this was a really, like, I had this impression from before, but it was a really, 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 really good reminder. I am so not a floss drop person. I don't want no, I'm a big no to the floss drops. It doesn't work for me at all. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. All right. So March was my Big Toe March. So I was working on the work of Christmas. So this is a copyright of 2009. So again, can't do the math. So 12 years old this chart was. And I was doing this on an ice blue Lugana. Yes. And so what I largely got accomplished is the bottom half. And even now I look at this and I laugh because I can hear a friend of mine sort of saying, wow, that's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. So I got the bottom half, all the words, and it was funny, even when I was getting ready to do this, and I was looking at this, I was like, why did I not do this medallion here in the bottom? And I remember even going back and looking at that and saying, again, so apparently I have a problem with onyx. So the medallion, this motif down here is all done with Weeks Dye Works onyx. Yes. And I don't want to do it in onyx. I don't want it to be black. And so my plan is, what I really need to do is I need to finish up the top part, and then I'm planning on using the colors from these other motifs and put them into this. So this motif has, you know, flowers and vines and things like that. So my real plan is I just want to see how these ones work out, because there's a couple of different greens and stuff like that, and then I'm going to adjust this motif and hopefully pull a lot of the colors that are used in these other motifs down into this one. But I wanted to do these other motifs with those colors just so I could see how the variegation was working out and what it was doing before I made those decisions. But it was funny. I laughed when I pulled it out and went, why didn't you work on this? Then I went, oh, I remember why you did that. So again, so what are the positives from this one? I'm thrilled that I started this, and I feel like I made decent progress on this. I'm planning on getting back to this in 2022 as well. And what I learned from this is this was a really great opportunity, particularly given these very large motifs here. This is the project that I used to find out how many stitches I can get out of a skein. And so these were Weeks Dye Works that I was using for these. And so I think my number is like a standard skein of Weeks Dye Works gets me about 1,275 stitches. Now, that of course is where you're doing it, where it's a very solid motif and you're doing it consistently. So, you know, 1270-ish. And I have used that number on other projects since then. So it was a really great opportunity because I don't normally pay that much attention to how I'm using up my floss. But again, due to the size of these motifs, it gave me a really great opportunity to see just how many stitches I can get out of a skein. And so that is a number that is specific to me and my stitching style. But it is a number, it is a number that I now have in my repertoire, courtesy of my March project. So that was my big lesson learned from March. Again, thrilled that I got this started. I'm looking forward to working on it again in 2022. Again, I'm just really happy that all these things got started. I should have brought another bin as far as I'm taking them out. Okay, so that brings us to April. Which of course is the Anne Morris. I was doing Anne Morris in April. So this is a limited edition chart from Hands Across the Sea, which you could only get from Traditional Stitches. Traditional Stitches is officially sold out of this. So your only way of getting this chart is either having someone loan it to you or sell it to you or gift it to you. So this was my April new start and focus piece. I am doing this piece on 32 count. 28 or 32 count. Now this is an older version of Vintage Blue Whisper. And you'll hear me talk about it quite regularly if you go back to those videos where I was talking about it. Because if you look at the vintage blue whisper linen that you can get from Zweigart these days. Mine does not look the same. It's a very different tonality. I can hear Gary from the Sunshine Stitcher saying, why didn't I put these all on boards? And the answer is because they're all sitting in their bags. So there's where I got to. So not as much, again, it's my theme of the year, not as much progress as I was hoping. I am converting the colors on this. So clearly in this top border, I added in the navy, I've changed the red, you know, I've changed the colors quite a bit. This motif here is that was a color that I was really struggling with, and I ended up pulling a silk from Silks for You out of one of the grab bags of theirs that I have, which ended up being the perfect one. Did a few more borders, left off the bands in between, which you would think that I was going to be interested in doing. And part of that has to do with the fact that over the course of April, one of my relatives was declining quite rapidly. And so my plan is to turn this piece into more of a family tribute piece. So I ended up doing a bunch of work on changing even more colors, and so it'll be interesting again. So the plan is that this is going to come out again, you know, and part of the holdup was I was really holding off on some of these intermediary bands because I needed to come up with, I had my original color palette, and then when I decided that I was going to make it more of a family tribute piece, there were more colors that came into the palette. So there were more colors came into the palette, some of the colors left the palette, and I needed to have those definitive answers so that I can now map out how I'm using those colors for the rest of these. So now that I have those colors, and there are some very unexpected colors in there, and so how those are going to play out, I just need to map out this next batch down to here. In my head, I've pretty much decided how they're going to work down here, but I just need to map out this last bit. So when this comes out in 2022, it'll be interesting to see how those work out, because it's going to be a very different color palette, because my goal has, you know, again, over the course of April, as I was stitching this, my goal for this piece changed. So glad that I got it started. You know, I clearly didn't get it finished in the 12-month time frame that was set out. Now, if I had been working on this regularly, the time frame that the Traditional Stitches and the Stitch Along had set out, I totally could have gotten this accomplished in 2021. It just wasn't my goal for 2021 that this had to be done. My goal for Anne Morison was to get it started in 2021. So very successful on that front, changing a lot of things about it. So I'm actually looking forward to getting back to this piece in 2022. Now that I have my new color palette and sort of mapping out what that's going to look like. So stay tuned in 2022 so you can see what happens on that front. It will end up, you know, for people who are really in the, if you're going to do a reproduction sampler, do a reproduction sampler. My changes will not appeal to you at all. And that's okay, because it's my piece. At the end of the day, this is going to be hung up in my house. And the only person who has to be happy with the outcome is me. And I will be. I will make sure of that. So again, glad that I got it started. Happy with where I got accomplished. I look back at this and I laugh at how much I struggled about finding that color for that centerpiece, but found something and it works. I have a new color palette. There's, you see in the bag, there's all sorts of things going on in there. So I need to map out how those colors are getting used. And then we'll make some progress on that in 2022. And again, with my identification that I do well, where if about setting a specific goal. So when it comes back out in 2022, part of the discussion I have will be what my goal is for each of the pieces and what I'm trying to accomplish. Okay, So then we had May, which is Mirabilia May. And the piece that I was working on was April's Blue Diamond. And this chart is like 20 years old. 20, 21, 20 something. 1999. So it's turning 23 in 2022. It's of legal drinking age. No. Anyway, again, so my favorite part about this is that I got it started, and I made, as far as I'm concerned, really good progress on this. So I'm doing this on a Picture This Plus. I don't remember what this is called. I'd have to look it up. So this is on a Picture This Plus. Got all of this bottom half of her skirt done. Everything that's left open in here is beads, and got to start on sort of this bottom ruffle. Down here at the bottom. So when this comes back out, again, my focus will be on the bottom part of this, just to make more progress on it. But again, thrilled that it got started. Was very happy with my progress on it for a 20-plus-year-old chart. At least it's finally getting worked on. And again, one of the benefits is that I was looking at this going, I like this chart just as much today as when I originally got it. And it's interesting, I was going to do, when I get there, when I work on this again, I'll look it up, because Sarah the Stitchin' Mommy was working on a Nora Corbett fairy, and the called for butterfly charms from Mill Hill are no longer being produced. And so I was having a moment saying, I know that I have all the butterfly charms that I need for mine. I am betting that I got them when I was originally kitting this up, and it'd be interesting to go back and see if some of those charms have now been discontinued. And so what did I learn from this one? So one of the things, and I was talking about it even coming into 2021, it made me very grateful that I had bought the specialty things at that point in time. And so I've talked about this before, and I totally blame my mother, because that's how I was raised, that when you are buying a new chart and there are specialty fibers, get the specialty items when you're doing it, because they will be available when the chart is coming out. And you know, if you're a stitcher like me, who it may take up to 20 years or 20 plus years before you start to work on a project, over the course of 20 years, you have no guarantee that those items will still be available. Things are being discontinued and coming in and being changed and all that kind of stuff. So I would encourage you to get the specialty items. So it's, you know, 3 weeks ago, I was showing you some of my haul, and they'd asked me if I needed to see the DMC list. So that's an example where I am not particularly concerned that I, get all the DMC when I'm starting it, or when I've originally bought the chart, because my expectation is DMC is going to be around for a while. It's, as far as I know, it's not going anywhere. So I'm not terribly concerned that I'm not going to be able to get DMC. But I do have charts in my 5-year plan where it's not that you couldn't necessarily kit them up, but it would be substantially more challenging to get them kitted up. So, for example, some of the things that I'm thinking of is Victoria Sampler. So Victoria Sampler is heading into semi-retirement. So I'm not sure that there's going to be, rafts of new charts coming out. And certainly the big topic over the course of 2021 is that with them retiring, all of the thread kits for their charts have been discontinued. So as of today, all of the thread packs for all of the Victoria Sampler charts have been discontinued. Now, again, when they were announced that they were retiring, I, of course, you know, went into my stash and was like, because I have quite a chunk of Victoria Sampler charts, and I don't necessarily have all of the thread kits. I have all of the thread kits for ones where I go like, I really, they're my top tier Victoria Sampler charts. I have thread kits for all of those, no problem. So I was content with what I had. I think there's probably one or two where I was like, it maybe would have paid off if you'd gotten that. But then what I did is I really looked at my stash and said, no, look at all the stitching that you have yet to do. We'll worry about that as we get closer. So I'm not worried about them at this point in time, and we'll deal with that issue if I get to that point where I have a chart and I don't have the thread pack. The other option, the other thing from Victoria Sampler is that they have also put out a conversion chart because some of the things have gotten harder to get. So they have their own conversion chart for colors that are used in their charts. So I've made sure that I have downloaded that conversion chart. Why? Hey, semi-retirement, retiring, who knows what's going to happen over the course of time. So when they said they had that conversion chart, I made sure that I downloaded it, and it's sitting in my stitching folder on my computer. I do need to do a backup though, and make sure that I've got that ready to go. So again, so my lesson learned is I was looking at that as going, yeah, those Mill Hill Treasures, specialty beads, you know, weird fibers. You know, I think back to Ink Circles, one of their charts, which used Carrie's Creations threads in Epiphany. I bought those, came out because I loved it. I have Epiphany in both cotton and in silk, but Carrie's Creation threads have been discontinued. She's no longer making them. She hasn't been making them for quite some time. So again, it's one where I am incredibly grateful that at the time I looked at that and said, I need to get that, and I need to get it now. So also in May, because I was trying to do more than one project in May, but I was really sort of focusing on Nora Corbett and Mirabilia. So one of the other pieces that I worked on in May was Fairy Winter Dream. So Fairy Winter Dream, I started in 2020. That was my May start for 2020. I love this. Love this. So, and again, the whole goal was to make some progress on this. So largely what I was spent my time on was focusing on doing this over one skin up here. So I did make progress. So she's got, you know, 2 arms. We are heading up. She's still, of course, got her face to do. So there's still quite a bit, not quite, there's still some 1/1 skin left to do. Before, of course, we go back. And my goal would be, of course, to finish up all of the skin. And then we've got these big wings, which, of course, will include Krynic. And then get on with the beading. But again, this is a, how old is this chart? Okay, I have no idea how old this chart is. But it's not recent, but it is, whoops, it is a chart that not very many people have seen. And the thing that I really like is I love how it looks on this fabric. I love how it looks on the darker fabric. I think it stands out so much more on this fabric than it does on the more neutral one, which was Ocean Kiss Linen. So I love how this is looking. I'm looking forward to working on this in my head, in my goals for 2022. I have some very specific goals on the progress that I want to make on this. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. And it's fun when you take it out and you go like, ugh, love how that looks. And then the third project that I worked on in May for Mirabilia May was also a Nora Corbett, because Nora is, of course, the designer behind Mirabilia. And so I think I only hauled this out once, maybe twice. So I was working on, from the Christmas Eve Couriers series from her, This is Vixen. And I am doing this on a 28 count denim Jobelin. And that's where that one sits. I have the whole series. I've got one finished. I only have 8 more to go, plus the sleigh. But did haul it out for a little bit and made a little bit of progress on this. Again, this one didn't come out frequently, but it did come out for a little bit in May. So what did I learn from this one? So one, the answer is I love working on my Mirabilias. So that was good. Mirabilia Nora Corbett. My goal in May, I didn't spend a lot of time working on the Nativity in May because I was planning on having sort of my Mirabilia May and focusing on these. What I learned in this is that I was looking at sort of, it's my things where I was trying to evaluate options around rotations. And so I had, as you can see, I had three specific projects from that particular designer that I was working on. And the answer is I didn't do a very good job of rotating them. And so one of my goals for 2022 is to figure out, again, I'm still struggling on coming up with a rotation. We'll talk about that as we get closer to the end. But May was a month where I was working. I think my goal was that I spent the week working on April's Blue Diamond, and then on the weekends I worked on a different project. Because by that point in time, that's when I was sort of figuring, it's like, if you're spending too much time all on one project, you're sort of getting burnt out on a project, and you know, this variety may be helpful. And I think the concept of variety is good. I think the way that I did it for those particular ones was not necessarily, that's not the correct rotation for me. So I'm still working on trying to find out the right rotation for me. And we'll be working on that again in 2022. But I tried, so that was my month of, I was trying a rotation. Again, I'm not sure it's quite the right, it's not necessarily the right rotation for me, but I tried it. All right. Then we get to June. And so my focus piece for June was, so it was Jeanette Douglas June, and I was working on the Canadian Patriotic Sampler by Jeanette Douglas. I love this chart. Love it, love it, love it. So I kept all of the called for colors except one. I changed Arroyo, which is the color that is used for the words. And I changed it from Arroyo because I changed the fabric. So I am doing this on a 32 count Pearl Gray Lugana. So I made decent progress on this. Now, this is one where you can get a thread pack for this. I did not get the thread pack for this because a lot of the colors that were used in this I already had in my stash. I had full skeins of them. And the other interesting thing, and if you go back, so June is also when I did my interview with Jeanette, where we had a discussion that, quite frankly, if I had gotten the thread pack for this and I was doing it on my 32 count, because she did hers 28, 32, I think, I swear this is 32. Some of the, you know, so up here at the top, like the cross stitches, I'm doing those using one strand of the silk over 2 strands of fabric threads. But when you got down here into some of these other motifs, I ended up using 2 strands to make, like particularly in these maple leaves here in the center, I needed 2 strands to provide coverage on this. And she'd made the comment that, yeah, I probably would have a little bit of a risk that if I had gotten the thread pack for this, that I would not have enough of the thread, because I had changed the fabric count so that I was doing it on a lower count than what it was originally done on. Now, the interesting thing about this is, so I got all of this done because from here down, I'm planning on making some changes to the chart. So, you know, this area here is off to the side, and I have ended up centering that. Yes, I know it's Jeanette Douglas, and it's somewhat sacrilegious to say I'm changing her design, but I'm changing her design. And I have a very specific idea of how this is going to look at the end and what I'm putting in there. So it'll be interesting when this one comes out this year, because, you know, this is as charted. This is technically as charted, but the placement has moved. So when I get back to working on this in 2022, that's when my changes to her chart will start coming out. And it would be fun if I could finish this in 2022 and then have another interview with Jeanette and see how she likes my changes. I've known Jeanette for a really long time, so she could totally tell me if she doesn't like it. But again, as we talked about in the interview with Jeanette, at the end of the day, the only person who really has to be happy with my project is me. My project, my colors, my choices, it's going to stay in my house. So there you go. And quite frankly, I will say I am that person that even if Jeanette said, you know, yours is okay, but I like my original design better, I'm going to go, that's great. I'm glad that she likes hers better than my changes. And as long as I like my changes better than hers, then we're all happy. But they're my changes, so I'll get to change them any way I want, including taking them out and reverting back to Jeanette's when we get there. All right, moving along. So, July was Jolly July, which is when I was working on, there it is. So from Mill Hill, this is a visit from St. Nick Quartet. This is the first one. This is a kit from Mill Hill. I actually stuck with the kit. I did not change out the fabric because it's a series of 4 and I have all 4 of them and I want them to be consistent. But I did get it finished. If not in the month of July, very, very early August. So I got that one done. Again, I have also bought the 4 Mill Hill frames for these 4 to go in. So again, theoretically, one of my goals for 2022, which is not exactly stitching related, is to stop being such a wuss and get this put into its frame so that it can be sitting out in my display for 2022 at Christmas time in my house. So again, this is one where I did change it a little bit. What did I change? I took out the dog, only because I don't have a dog and I'm not really a dog person. I'm actually not really a pet person. So I made it into a scene that was more representative of my house. So I'm happy with my changes on that one. You know, there is a lot of stitching in this, right? Because effectively, largely, sort of all of this is full coverage down here. And I remember watching somebody else sort of saying they were a little bit surprised when they got in there and went, man, like this is a really dense stitch. This was a dense stitch. But it's accomplished, got all the beads on there. So now it just needs to go into its frame. Now, when exactly the next 4 are going to get worked on, now that's up for debate. That's going to get figured out in 2022. I haven't quite figured out, and again, when we get to my 2022 plans in the next video, we'll talk about that and you'll see what's going on there. All right, so then in August, I was doing Ink Circles August. And so I was working on Bee's Knees. And again, all of these focus pieces for me, they were all brand new starts, every single one of them. And I'm doing this on a 32 count Lilac Lugana. And so I effectively sort of got that center, sort of these center motifs, not the diagonal. So there is a long way left to go on this one because you've got all of those 4 diagonals as well as all of the outer border. I am doing this with the called for Valdani silk. So this is a color. This is a silk colorway that I wouldn't necessarily normally gravitate to, but I think it's working out for me because I changed the background, the fabric that I'm stitching it on, that I'm not doing it on the called for angel hair. So I'm glad that I've put it onto a color as opposed to doing it on a cream color, white, antique white. This is the one that we were having the debates on about whether I was going to do it on this lilac color, whether I was going to do it on soft ivory. So again, I'm very happy with my fabric choice on this. And again, I'm glad that I got it started. I have a lot of ink circles in my stash yet to do. So what did I learn on this one? Well, we talked about this back in August when I was working on this, saying I have some unique tendencies about potentially overthinking things. And I do think sort of I overthought how I was using my variegated thread. And so it'll be interesting when this comes out again. Hopefully I'll remember that lesson that says you don't need to spend as much time plotting your path and thinking about how you're using your thread. Because as far as I'm concerned, I spent probably more time than I should have. And now that I've done that, hopefully when it comes out again, I will be a little bit faster and a little less neurotic, shall I say, about how I'm using my floss. Now, somewhere down here, I have a beverage because I can hear my voice going. All right. So that was August. So then in September, my focus piece was the out of print, now out of print Tapestry of Life. Again, this is a very old chart. Somewhere here, surely it says 1994. Yeah. So that would make it, anyway, egregiously elderly. Again, and not a small piece. And this is one where it was interesting. that as I was working on it, the funny thing, I remember getting to the end of the month and going, man, like, you have not made any progress on this thing at all. And then I kind of hauled it out and went, you have made progress. You started with a completely blank piece of fabric when you started this. So by the time we hit September, I'd finally finished all of my nativity charts. So I was free to focus on other things. So again, when I look at this now, and even again, when I looked at it at the end of the month, I went, even though I didn't feel like I had made a lot of progress, as far as I'm concerned, I'd made a lot of progress on this one, because I was also starting my temperature tree at the same time. So I'm very happy with this. You know, it reminded me how persnickety Stony Creek charts are. And again, the lesson that I learned from this is I did my approach. Remember I said I was going to do a length of the thread that I was using for words, and then I would come down and I would do a full 6 strands of one of the colors in here. Now again, the length of strands that I was using was very small, because, you know, generally in a Stony Creek for that type of a design, you're stitching about 6 stitches at a time. So I had very small lengths of them, but I would put in 1 strand up here, and then I would come down and use a full 6 strands of whatever, putting in, you know, 6 stitches, 6 stitches, 6 stitches, 6 stitches, you know, 6 times 6, putting in 36 stitches in here. The other thing that I learned on this one, particularly, you know, when I was doing that set of 6 stitches, is having 6 needles. So when I was getting ready to do this, and I identified the color that I was working, taking those 6 strands, threading up 6 needles so that I didn't have to stop and rethread. And again, so I think that's an efficient, I don't necessarily do that on all of my charts, but certainly on a chart like this where you've got all these small amounts, I found it very helpful. And so that was one of my lessons learned on that one. I haven't typically been a person who threads up multiple needles and has them ready at, you know, always ready. But I did find it very helpful in this one. And so that's, again, for me, as I'm stitching something, you know, that has that many color changes, threading up the multiple needles was beneficial. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this, because we're heading up here to yeah. So I'm heading up towards the top. So I only have a few more lines before I hit the top, because then of course I hit the top, and my plan is once I hit the top and do these persnickety flowers here, coming down and start working on these borders and finishing it up. But you know, again, I've had this in my stash for over 25 years, and it finally got started, and I'm thrilled that it started. I want to work on it again in 2022 and make more progress on it, so that it, you know, I can actually, you know, work towards getting things finished. So I really like this one. Again, it's one where, you know, it's another one for me where I look back at the stash that I have and I go, I like the stash that I have. I like the number of charts that I have. It's, you know, quite a few. But part of it has to do with the fact that, you know, as I said, this chart is now out of print. It doesn't mean that you can't get it, but you would need to end up back on a resale site or getting it secondhand from somewhere, and I don't know how long that's necessarily going to be available. You know, this is the type of chart that in the current fashion, and I've been stitching long enough where I can go things come and things go, because we all know the ducks and the geese from the 1980s are not being stitched the same way. Doesn't mean that there aren't ducks and geese on things, but they're not being stitched the same way. So this is a type of chart where even from Stony Creek, you don't tend to see a lot of this even from them anymore. Even their style has evolved somewhat. You know, and as I said when I started this, the Stony Creek charts aren't for everybody. there's a lot of color changes. There's a lot of that, you know, 4 stitches of this color, 6 stitches of another color. Like in every flower, there's like 6 colors, you know, and there's only a total of, you know, 17 stitches in the whole thing. So you know that you're working in a limited number. And for a lot of people, it's way too finicky, too time consuming, too annoying. And trust me, some of those 3 stitches are annoying, which is why that routine of like doing 1 strand and then sort of doing, you know, those 6 strands of like 4 stitches each was actually very helpful to me. And quite frankly, that's a system that, you know, going forward, if I work on more Stoney Creak, which I am expecting to do, I will take that lesson with me, because I found that very helpful. Do something where it's like, okay, I got that done. Now let's do one of these finicky things that annoys me, and do a little bit of it, and then do something easier and come back and do finicky. And that alternation let me get progress that I was happy with. All right, so that was September. October was Cottage Garden Samplings. It's like I was looking at it going. And so here is the chart. The Halloween sampler from Cottage Garden Samplings, which I was doing it on Poison Apple linen from Color and Cotton. Now again, this is one where I changed the colors, and I was alternating between DMC, just straight DMC in the words, and the first letter of all of these was DMC Étoile. I changed the color in the stars, and I made that Edmar rayon. The white became glow in the dark thread from DMC. So I really like how this turned out. And again, as far as I was concerned, this was a very, very successful month, because I started this project and I finished it in the month. So I felt very productive in October. And yes, now once I finish the WIP parade, one of my tasks for tomorrow will be sort of unbagging some of these items and putting charts away and flosses away and all that kind of things. Welcome to the beginning of January. November was my Marnik November. Remember November. Love this chart. Love, 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 love it. And again, this 2012, so that wasn't bad. Not quite 10 years old. Just done on an antique white Lugana, Jobelin, one of those two. And I got all the stitching complete. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Can I say it one more time? I love it. Now, as you'll notice, the charm still isn't on here. That's actually one of my goals for this week. I was hoping to have it done before the end of the year, and that just didn't happen, and that's okay. So I am planning on attaching my charm, and again, because Charlotte made the comment about stitching something behind it, which I think I'm going to do. So I don't know that I will necessarily show this again once I put it on there. I would like to get this framed in 2022, and when that gets done, I will show it once at that point, and you'll see it then. But again, love this. Now, this is one where you go like, okay, so I began this at the beginning of November. I finished it in November. But when you compare this to the Cottage Garden Samplings Halloween sampler, I'm still a little bemused as to why this one took me so much longer. Not sure what the cause of that was, but somehow I seem to make a lot less progress on this. But I got it done. So that is, this was actually my 4th finish of the year. So compared to some of those people who are There's a lady on Instagram who I think she has over 100 finishes in 2021. I'm not anywhere close to that, and I'm okay with that. She's doing her and I'm doing me, and there you go. And again, for my stitching history, 4 finishes in 1 year, that's a pretty big year. Okay, so then in December was, of course, the Rosewood Manor, which you've already seen. I did have a birthday start planned, which did not happen, again, for some various reasons. So I just want to say, for all of you who sent me birthday wishes, thank you so much. Thank you for thinking of me. For any of you who stitched on my birthday thinking of me, thank you for thinking of me and celebrating my birthday in that way. My birthday was an unexpected day. So I actually got no stitching done on that day. My big birthday start did not happen. And again, that's life. You go back to, you have a plan, and sometimes life interrupts. Anyway, so for any of you who stitched on my birthday, thank you so much. But I still have my birthday start kitted up. So that might be factoring into plans in 2022. The other thing that I was in my head planning on working on in 2022 is I had started, this is from Bygone Stitches, Quaker Christmas 2. This is the Songs of Christmas one. Now this for me was actually, I started this in 2019 in December. So I actually look at this and go, so everything that you see that is stitched here, I stitched when I was spending time in the hospital with one of my aunts. So I was hoping to stitch on it again in December. That again didn't happen. But hopefully this is going to make a showing in 2022. I am using the called for colors, but I am stitching it on a green fabric as opposed to a white or an off-white or antique white or whatever it is. So there's that one. And again, so all the best laid plans. The stitching on this one that I was hoping to do in December did not occur. And that's okay. Again, a plan is a plan. It doesn't, things happen in life and interruptions and all that kind of stuff. And it's good that you are able to adapt to change. And again, so my lesson in December was that's just a reality. Sometimes things happen and you don't get to stitch as much as you want, and you don't get to do the things that you want, and that's okay. Stitching is not the #1 thing in life. Stitching is a hobby, but there are other things that have to take precedence, and those things did take precedence. Anyway, so that is the quick review of, it's really my 2021 in review and a little bit of a WIP parade. I will say that I do have other WIPs that I have, which I'm not going to show you. Really, the WIPs that I was focusing are the WIPs that I was working on or planning on working on in 2021. If you've been some of the earlier one of my Flosstube videos from 2020, you will see that there are some projects that I was working on 2020. And the answer is I was working on them in 2020 and they didn't factor into my 2021 plans at all, which is totally fine. I'm okay with that. I came up with my 2021 plan knowing that I wasn't going to work on those WIPs, and I'm okay with that. So again, some of the lessons that I've learned: 1, I'm really thrilled that I have a plan. 2, I'm thrilled that I got to start on so many of these pieces. 3, I learned that I actually hate starting pieces. I hate starting them. Once they're started and I can just pick them up and go, I do much better. I don't like starting. I don't enjoy starting the project. So I'm really glad that I have this raft of projects that are already started and ready to go. And, you know, one of the things, you know, again, as I look at what other people are working on, I, in 2021, started a lot of large projects. Right, some of them are smaller. So the Just Nan Lady Scarlet's journey was smaller. But my Mirabilia is big, my Stony Creek is big, my Rosewood Manor is big, the My Big Toe is big. So I started a lot of bigger projects. And, you know, so I never had any expectation that those were necessarily going to get finished in any given month. You know, because they're going to take me some time. Look at that. The Rosewood Manor Quaker Christmas. This is going to take me a while. Congratulations. It's going to take forever. Well, hopefully not forever, but it's not something that I'm going to pump out very quickly. And that's okay, which is why it is important for me to, I'm glad that I've got them started. I'm glad that I'm making progress on them. I can't wait to make more progress on them, but it does mean that I need to come up with some kind of a rotation. And again, that is factored into my 2022 plans about how I'm going to be rotating things and what I'm going to be doing and all that kind of stuff. And again, so as I was looking at my 2022, as I was working through 2021, I was looking at my plan, and some of those plans for 2022 have changed, you know, based on what was happening in 2021 and how I'm doing things. And so stay tuned for 2021 and see what happens. Yeah, I don't agree. There's still a bag in there. Wait, that's November. We've already seen that. So that is it. This is a big long one. So sorry for being away. But again, there were just some life things that were going on that needed to be dealt with. So hopefully we are getting back to a more regular schedule. The weird thing is that there's hopefully going to be 2 videos coming up in short succession, because there's going to be this one. And really what I'm doing is I'm going to stop and I'm going to start uploading this one, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to record the next one and say, let's talk 2022. So thank you so much for everyone who has been a faithful follower. Thank you so much for tuning in and commenting and watching my progress on my stitching. And I really hope that you have had a productive 2021, that you've got some good stitching in, and that you're looking forward to a fun-filled stitching 2022. So take care, and we'll see you in the next Flosstube.